Hey guys, welcome back to CheatSheetPros.com. Today I'm going to look at NFL Week 4, but at the beginning of the video I'm going to show you the new wide receiver cornerback chart and the tight end cover chart that I added. I posted a thing on Facebook in both of our groups. We have a free group and a premium group. Our premium group is only $13 a month to get daily sheets every day. We also have a chat, and we use that money to basically roll into the optimizer to make it better and keep improving it. So feel free to join our free Facebook group if you're not a premium member. I'll occasionally post some sheets in there and let people try them out and play with them. And that's where we get a lot of ideas for our new additions. So we're going to look at NFL Week 4. I'm going to scroll through the NFL cheat sheet, kind of show you what it looks like. And then I'm also going to show you the wide receiver cornerback chart and the tight end cover chart that I added last night for Week 4. After posting a thing in the Facebook group, there was an overwhelming response of people that wanted to see it, so I decided to, work on it last night and bring it in. So this is the NFL cheat sheet. You can see we've got our main tab that lists out all the players. We have our DVP, so you can see which teams are giving up how many points to each position, and then I just sort it by the total column. And then we have our stack tab. Most of my videos, I use the stack tab to build my lineups and look in depth at games, and I'm going to go over that with you. And then our two new charts over here. Now our tight end cover chart is the same as our wide receiver chart, so I'm going to go ahead and show you what this looks like. So over here we've got our player, we've got our team, we've got our position, and then we have the height and weight. And what's good about this is Lazard popped up a couple weeks ago. I was looking at him, and I mean, that guy's a monster. He is, where's he at? 77 inches, so that puts him at 72, 6'5", 227 pounds, and he plays out of the slot. That is a monster slot, dude. Because most people are looking at people like Braxton Berrios, that's 5'9", 5'10", 180, 190, so he is a huge slot guy. So I had a lot of him in that last showdown matchup that they did where he exploded. So it's something kind of fun to look at, their height and weight. You can also compare the height and weight of the other person, but that's not the main reason for this. So this here is going to be where they line up at in a percentage. So whether they line up on the left side, the right side, or in the slot. And then the defender over here is the same thing. It shows their position, and then it shows how much they line up on the left side, the right side, or the slot, and basically coverage. So you can see if a cornerback is moving around, if he's staying on one side of the field, and if there's a potential for shadow coverage. So these other three here, this is the targets per route. So if that receiver runs a lot of routes, what's the percentage of times he's targeted? And so to make it easy, since this is probably new for a lot of you, I did green and blue. So green is really good. That's, I think, 23% and higher. And then below 15%, I think, is blue. And then the other ones I just kind of left white. So you can see, so obviously here we look at Arizona. We all know that DeAndre Hopkins is targeted in 29% of his routes. He's the number one go-to receiver. And then the second column is fantasy points per route. So they basically calculate how many fantasy points per route run. And you can see here, it's not even close. DeAndre Hopkins is 0.58, and the other guys are 0.19, 0.15. And then you've got the receiver catch rate, which you can see here. Keyshawn has a horrible catch rate, which he's probably getting a lot of deep balls. And then you've got 86% for Hopkins and 80% for Fitzgerald playing out of the slot. And then here, this is the player grade, and this is the defender grade, and this is going to show you an advantage or a disadvantage. So the main things that I want you to look for when you're looking at this sheet, don't worry about the height and weight stuff. That's just something fun to play with. But go through here, and you can sort by team name. That's usually how I send the sheet. And then click your game here. So the three receivers that we're going to have. So for example, in the Buffalo game, we have Cole Beasley. We know he's going to play out of the slot. We have Diggs, who is primarily a wide receiver, and John Brown is the left wide receiver. And you can see here the percentage they play. So Cole Beasley plays 88% of his snaps in the slot. So he very rarely moves to the outside. So he's the primary slot guy. And then you have Diggs. Diggs kind of moves all over, 30, 33, 37. I just say he's going to be everywhere on the field. John Brown, half the time he's on the left and then slowly moves around to the other ones. You can see their stats here. Of course, we know Diggs is a target monster. He's getting 24% of targets. He's got the highest fantasy points per route and a 71% catch rate. Now the key is you want to see who the primary coverage is over here. So for example, we have Cole Beasley. He plays 88% of the time in the slot. LaMarcus Joyner, he's the slot cover guy. So I want to look over here and see, does he always cover the slot? Does he cover it, 30% of the time? Well, this one, he covers the slot 89% of the time. So he's the primary slot cover guy. So you want to look at his stats and kind of see how he's doing. So out of the Las Vegas corners, he's allowing the highest catch rate of 22%. The other guys are 13 and 13. He's given up 0.31 fantasy points per route, and he's allowing a 75%, or I'm sorry, this was 22% targets. So he's targeted 22% of the time. He's given up 0.31 fantasy points per route run in his coverage, and then he's allowing a 75% catch rate. So catch rate, I did the same thing here. I kind of color coded it. And then you can see over here, John Brown, this guy's given up a 91% catch rate and a 46. So anything 30, 40, 45 is good for the corner. Anything that's 60, 70 and higher is really good for the wide receiver. So this would look like Cole Beasley has a good matchup here. Now let's look at Stephon Diggs. He moves all over. He's got good stats. And then this guy primarily plays on the left side. So since Diggs moves all over, he's going to see a little bit of everyone. And Diggs is someone I really like in week 4. These corners are just not that good. You can see over here their grades are 50, 60, and 59. So no matter who he has covering him, he's going to have an advantage. And you can see these guys primarily stay in one position. So you've got this guy who plays in the slot almost all the time. This guy stays on the left side. He's 92%, 3%, and none on the right. So we know he's going to be on the left. And then over here we have this guy who's going to play almost 90% on the right side, and he never plays on the left. So you can imagine the Bills already know this, so they're going to move Diggs wherever. So if Diggs gets up here against Arnett, I mean, this guy's giving up 0.43 fantasy points per route and a 91% catch rate. Diggs will eat his lunch. So I imagine the Bills to move him all over, and he could have a big play here. So that's one way to look at this. Let me find another. And when we run through the Week 4 games, I'll also look at this. But you want to focus and see, are these players moving around? Because you might get someone that's only in one spot 50% of the time, and then a guy that's only covering it 30% of the time. So you have to understand, don't look at the numbers and the advantage. It's going to move around. So I highlight the 3 and I look game by game when I do my breakdown. That's how I find some plays. If you want to come over here to advantage, you can just sort of high to low. So let's look at the top 5 guys here. Let's look at the top 6 because I want to show you the shadow coverage. So Cooper Kupp, he plays in the slot 61% of the time and then moves in the outside a little bit, which they throw quite a bit. You can see he's got a good target rate, good fantasy points per route. A 90% catch rate is outstanding for Cooper Kupp. And he's going to go up primarily against this dude, Darnay Holmes, who is the slot cover corner for the Giants. So I want to see how often is that guy covering the slot. The slot usually has a primary guy, and he's covering it 88% of the time. So he's going to have a lot of this guy on him. Well, this guy's targeted in 23% of the routes in his coverage, which is really high. So a lot of people are picking on him. And then he's got a good fantasy points per route given up, and he's allowing a 75% catch rate. Excuse me. So that's fantastic for Cooper Kupp. And then one of the things here, let me go back to the team. So if Cooper Kupp's got a good matchup, I want to look at the other team. So we have Kupp, Reynolds, and Woods are the 3 primary receivers. Kupp we know is going to play out of the slot. Now Robert Woods, you see this all caps? This all caps mean that there's likely going to be shadow coverage. So we want to highlight that and come over here, and this is a perfect example. So James Bradberry is an outstanding corner. You can see he's got a grade of 83.2, which is higher than Robert Woods' 77.1. And since both names are all caps, they are expecting James Bradberry to shadow coverage Robert Woods. So he's going to move around wherever Woods lines up and try to take him out of the game. And he's given up a low 42% catch rate in his coverage. And he's targeted the least amount of the wide receivers at only 18%. So Bradberry, I just know from experience, is a really good corner. And so if you look at this game with the Rams, you see, okay, Woods, he's going to be in a tough matchup against Bradberry. And then we have these other two guys. Josh Reynolds doesn't really do a lot. He's targeted 12% of the time. That's not much. But then you have Cooper Kupp, who's targeted a fair amount of time, and he gets a cake matchup against Darnay Holmes. So if I'm doing DFS, I want to play Kupp and stack him as opposed to Woods. Now, a lot of people that don't look at cover sheets like this are going to say, okay, Robert Woods is number one. Maybe they'll do Woods and Kupp. If you fade Woods and go Kupp like I did, was it last week or the week before? I can't remember. Woods, did decent. He put up like 11 or 12 fantasy points, but Kupp blew up for like 25 or 30. And so this is another spot we could see Kupp blow up. So let me go back over here to the advantage. And then the second one we got is Galladay. He moves around quite a bit, stays on the left side, good stats. Marshawn Lattimore used to be a solid cover corner. He's kind of declined. He's not targeted a lot, but he's given up an 83% catch rate, so they're saying that's an advantage for Galladay. And then Tyler Boyd, same thing. He's the slot guy, runs 80% of his routes out of the slot. He's going to get DJ Hayden, and he covers the slot 94% of the time, so he's primarily going to be there. Well, Hayden's given up a 92% catch rate, so that's good for Tyler Boyd. And then you can just kind of go down the list and see, what you like. You can see here Adam Thielen. He's in a plus matchup over here, but he's also shadow covered by Bradley Roby. Bradley Roby's decent, but they're still saying that Thielen's going to do well. In this game, I like Justin Jefferson while we're on it, because if Bradley Roby does cover Thielen and he struggles at all, Justin Jefferson had his breakout game last week, so he could do really good this week, and he is a fast dude. So it looks like he is going to 60% in the slot, 30% on the outside, so he kind of moves around a little bit. Vernon Hargreaves, he is 52% on the right, 26% on the left, so he's not going to have Vernon Hargreaves for most of the game. He's going to move around a lot. In Houston, I don't think they have a set corner that's going to run around. But anyways, this is how we look at the wide receiver matchup chart. So when I post the sheet, I post it by team so we can look at it. Excuse me. And then same thing for tight ends. So you can look here like Waller. And what we're looking at on the tight end side is you see the percentage of snaps they line up on the line, in the slot, or out wide. So slot and out wide is primarily where they're going to catch their passes, and we got the same thing. Percentage of routes they're targeted, fantasy points per route, the catch percentage they have, their grade, advantage, and then who's primarily covering them. Now the key here, as you can see, is it a safety, is it a linebacker, who typically covers the tight end if they're out in coverage, and they also have a player grade and then what they're giving up as far as targets, fantasy points per route, and catch percentage. So this is something kind of fun to look at. And this one I just sort by advantage, so you can sort here and go up and say, okay, Gronk has a big advantage, but he's not really getting a lot of fantasy points per route, and he has a lower target rate. Then you go over here to Darren Waller, who's got a massive target rate. He's essentially the first wide receiver on the team, and he's 78 inches, so what's that, 6'6", 255. He's a massive dude, and he's fast, and he's got a 74% catch rate, so we like Waller this week. And then you can go down here. A lot of people are typically on Logan Thomas is a big one, Hunter Henry, and they've got tough matchups on their coverages. So if you tuned into this video just to see the new wide receiver cornerback matchup chart, this is what it is. You can go ahead and stop here. I'm going to go ahead and take a look at a few Week 4 games. If you want to continue on with this, feel free to do so. So I typically don't go over these tabs a lot on my videos. The stat tab is primarily what I'm using to look at stuff. So I'm just going to flip through and look at a couple games so people can get an idea kind of how I use the sheet, what I look at. So the stack tab is fun. So this is going to show you everything you need to know here. We've got all of our Vegas stats up here, what the line opened at, what the line moved to, how much it changed. So this is the idea of the Vegas projected score. This is my custom model score that I usually go off of for picking games. This will have the percentage of bets. It's 0 because this game has already been played. And then over here, these are the stats. These are offensive points per game, yards per game, specific rushing, passing yardages. I also have the rank of each team and then how they do on the at home and on the road. And then the same thing for defense. Points allowed, yards allowed, rushing, passing yards allowed. Down here, in the big stat breakdown, we've got the rank. This is DVOA of offense, defense, and then we got rushing, passing. So we can look specific. And then last week I added in this short pass, deep pass rank, so you can tell if a receiver is someone that catches 5-yard balls over the middle, or if it's a primarily deep guy like a Brandon Cooks or a John Brown, how's the team against the deep ball. This here's your rank versus receiver. You can see how the team does versus the wide receiver 1, 2, wide receiver 3, and or the slot, the tight end, and then the pass catching running backs out of the backfield. And this will kind of point you in a direction. Now, I didn't want to duplicate the name, so you see Denver's on the left. So this is Denver over here on the left side, what they allow. And then the Jets are on the right. So the Jets, this is what they allow on the right. Over here, we have the projections for each team. And then we have a total. So this is the total fantasy points projected in the game, 72.7. And the opponent fantasy points allowed is 98.2. So I have a little box here. It pops up. It just says, hey, we got room for upside in this game. So the projections could be low, which we saw Denver put up 30 some odd points. So they had room for upside. And then also the Jets. So they were only projected for 74 fantasy points across the board. And the opponent was giving up 106. So, hey, we got room for upside here. So I could look at this if this was a main slate game and say, hey, both teams have significant room for upside. So the projections are low. So if people are running an optimizer, they're not going to get a lot of Denver and Jets players. Now, this was a Thursday night game, but if this is a Sunday game, they wouldn't show up in a lot of optimizers because it has a very low total of 40, 41. And we also had it projected about 41.3. But with so much room for fantasy point upside, this could be a possible game stack, which if you play the showdown slate, you probably did very well if you had some decent players in there because they put up, I think, 65 total points. The other thing we have down here is our, if you followed me, I always do a player tracker sheet. And so I just, instead of doing a separate sheet, I just have one in the background that scrapes off my desktop. And you can see how many fantasy points they've put up each week because this is kind of fun to look at and see. And we'll look at a couple of games so you can kind of see how they're doing, if they're doing really well, if they're not doing good. And then if one person is doing really well and the other one's not, who's booming when one's busting. Up here, so this is your DVP points allowed. So it's basically what's on this chart, but I just brought it in here to the stack tab so we could see it. We have the percentage of run versus pass, and then we have plays a game, first downs a game, and then this is a yard per point thing that's more for sports betting, but I will go over that at a later time. So for this game here, I look at the custom model. We had Denver opened up -2.5, moved all the way to +1. So the line moved 3.5 points to the Jets, basically because of the quarterback change for Denver. But we had Denver winning the game. But I'm not going to take credit for that because of the quarterback change. This is going off the stats of the other QB. So if you see a big injury, then, just take it with a grain of salt. No, this is just strictly ran off of stats and numbers, and it doesn't have anything to do with actual current players, and it doesn't factor in any injuries. So let's go ahead and take a look at another game. So that was the Thursday night game. So one of the games I want to look at is the Buffalo and Vegas game. So right here we have the line. We can see Bills opened up 2.5, moved to 3.5, so it moved a point to the Bills. Total has moved up 3 points. We have this as 30 to 29.5, so we have it scoring almost 60 points. I like Buffalo in this game, even though my custom model is basically saying, hey, take the points with Las Vegas. Buffalo's been on fire. Over here we can look, both teams, offensive points per game, they rank 3rd and 8th. They're putting up a massive amount of points. Yardage, 4th and 15th. And then you can see the specifics. So Buffalo, they're getting it done through the air. So they rank 2nd in passing yards per game at 330. And then Vegas is 14 and 14. So they've got a good balance and a good mix. So I'm going to look at the defensive side and say, okay, defensive points per game allowed, 16th and 25th. So Vegas is giving up 30 points per game, which ranks 25th. So they're giving up a lot of points. So I lean Buffalo here. But 16th at 25.7 is not that much better. So yardage-wise, they're giving up the 21st and 27th most yards, so both defenses aren't doing really good. There's not enough games to look at the home-road split, so take that with a grain of salt. And then you can see here, so Buffalo is really good at defending the rush yards on the ground, so Jacobs could struggle in this one. They have the 7th best, allowing only 106 rush yards per game. But if you watch football and you understand football, you know that that is primarily due to they're up and teams are playing catch up, so they're throwing a lot more, so they haven't needed to run. So look at that. And they're giving up the 28th most passing yards a game at 274.7. And then the opposite, the Raiders are getting murdered on the ground. Their D-line and linebackers are horrible. So they're giving up the 28th most rush yards per game at 163.7. So in that, I would look at Josh Allen because he's a mobile running quarterback, and then Devin Singletary. Now, if Zach Moss does not play, then I really like to move Singletary up, and he's only 5,900 on DK, 6,000 on FanDuel. And then they're about middle of the road. So if someone ranks 12 to 18, I don't look at that a whole lot. That's kind of in the middle. That could just be a few yards. Over here, as far as plays per game, 14th and 15th, first downs per game, 7th and 8th. So they match up pretty well here. As far as allowing, Las Vegas is really good against the tight ends. Well, Dawson, Knox, and Croft, I'm not really playing them a whole lot, so not too worried about that. And then, let's see here. So this is basically Buffalo is allowing the QBs and wide receivers to score the most points. Vegas is allowing the running backs to score the most points. So this would point me over to Devin Singletary if you're not playing Josh Allen. Or if you're playing Josh Allen, then you want to stack Diggs, their number one receiver. And then when we come down here, let's see. So let's look at the quick breakdown here. So this is the first thing I usually look at when I come in. If I'm doing my picks or sports betting, I look at the custom model and I look at these stats. If I'm doing fantasy, I stay on this bottom side of the sheet. And so here, offenses, we have 20th and 16th. So you can see Buffalo has not been a good rushing offense, but they've been a massive passing offense. They rank 2nd. And then pretty much the similar with Vegas. They haven't been good rushing. They've been good passing. And then defense, this is the kind of the kicker for me why I lean Buffalo, is they have the number 8 defense overall versus 27th of Las Vegas. That's a significant difference for me. And then rushing defenses, neither team is really good. Passing's kind of the same. But when you get into yardage and specific, this number here, this 8th versus 27th, I'm leaning Buffalo on this one. And then both teams are kind of middle of the pack for short pass, deep pass, so nothing really jumps out at me there. And then ranks versus receivers, they're kind of middle of the, excuse me, I'm still drinking my morning coffee, kind of middle of the pack. So you can see here, Las Vegas is 26th versus pass catching running backs. So again, that points over to Devin Singletary. So if Zach Moss can't go, that's another feather in the cap for Devin that we might want to put him in a GPP lineup because he may get a few balls out of the backfield. And so he should have success on screen passes and he should have success running the ball against the 32nd rated rush defense. And then we come down here to Vegas, and sometimes I'll flip through these if I'm doing a showdown slate and see kind of what the projections are. I highlight the top 3 in each for receptions, targets, yardage, and then you can kind of look. I hate it when they do these, 0.2 touchdowns, 0.5 touchdowns. You can't score 0.2. Give them a touchdown or don't. Like, I want to know, what do you think, not the average. And typical how most websites, all these major ones, do projections is they take the season-long numbers, they divide it by the number of games, and they just bump it up or bump it down a little bit for a good matchup or a bad matchup. So I don't really like that, but I put it in here so people can see, Diggs, he's projected for about 8 targets, 5 catches, 70 yards, 30% chance at a touchdown. I like Diggs to go over the century mark with 5 to 7 catches, so he's someone I really like this week. And then down here, I love this. This is something I look at a ton. This is the fantasy point tracker. So you can see here, Josh Allen, in week 1, he put up 33.2 points. In week 2, he put up 37.5 points. In week 3, he put up 36 points. So 33, 37, and 36 points. That's massive. So what I want to do is look at his salary. So we see he's 73. So he's averaging about 35 points a game. That's 5x. So if you're averaging around 35 fantasy points a game and you're priced right around 7,000, 7 times 5 is 35. So he's pushing 5x his salary. That is phenomenal for week in, week out production in a good matchup. So he's someone else that I like this week. And then you can come down here and you can see Diggs. And I kind of highlight these: green, yellow, whatever color that is, and blue, who struggles. So Gabriel Davis, he's the rookie. He hadn't really done a lot. He is picking up, though. He went from 3.5, 7.5 to 12. And then one of the things I look at, so we know Diggs is the number one. So when he booms, Diggs has boomed, except for he had a tough matchup on the wide receiver chart last week, which it wasn't on my sheet, but I still pull it and look at it, and we're adding it for week 4. So since he had a tough matchup and didn't do as well, which 15 points is still good, I want to know who did well. So we can see here, Cole Beasley, he jumped up to 19, and Tyler Kroft got in there with 18.4. So if you're ever looking at a matchup and you hear people on TV and NFL Network, and they're saying, oh, play Stephon Diggs, blah, 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 he's the number one, take that with a grain of salt, in one ear, out the other. Come over here and look at this and say, okay, if Josh Allen has a good week, we want to stack him with someone, but say Diggs has a tough matchup, and I'm fine if you still want to do a lineup with Allen and Diggs, that's fine. But if you want to fade Diggs for GPP and get some low ownership, maybe you come over here and say Diggs and say, okay, well, I'm going to do Cole Beasley, because the last time he had a tough matchup, Cole Beasley put up 19 points, and he is only $4,700, so he's a couple $1,000s less than Diggs. And then maybe we do Kroft. Knox really isn't doing anything. Kroft, I don't know if he didn't play or didn't get any targets these first 2 weeks, but 18 points and he's 3,400. That's pretty good. So maybe you do like a Josh Allen, Cole Beasley, Kroft stack. Now that would be very low owned, and if this game goes off and Diggs struggles, everyone who has Diggs at say 20-25% ownership, you're definitely going to have an edge here with Beasley and Knox. So something to look at. Now this week, week 4, I do like Diggs, so don't do that. That would be very contrarian. And then you come over here and look at the wide receivers on this side of the game, and boy, they're really struggling. So Hunter Renfrow is the default to number one besides Waller. So he's going to be a big one that we like this week at 4,600. They have him projected at the most targets, the second most receptions behind Waller, and 60 to 70 yards. So Renfrow is going to be a good punt at $4,600 in a game they should have to throw. Yeah, there really isn't anyone else for Vegas that's doing anything. Waller, New England took him out of the game last week, but he had 10 and then he had 31, so I like Waller. So if you are going to play Carr, which I hate Carr, you could stack Renfrow, Waller, go that route. But in this game, I like Buffalo. So since this video is getting semi-long, I'm just going to browse and hit a couple more games here and kind of see. And a lot of people ask me how you switch games. So click into this bottom box and you see, so you can't see, but when you click in this home team, this drop down appears. And you can scroll down and pick the home team. So let's look at, let's find another game here that might be good. Let's look at the Detroit game real quick. So here we can see our custom model has this 31 to 23 roughly with 54 total points. It's pretty close to the Vegas total, so I'm not going to do anything sports betting wise with the total. But we do have New Orleans covering the 3 points fairly easy. They're going to win by 7 to 8 points in our model. And then you can come over here and look at all these stats. You can see them yourself. New Orleans, they've been struggling and they really need to win this game. So one of the things that jumps out at me here, I'm going to come down here at the fantasy point tracker. Breeze has not been doing that well. So he's 5,800 and he's put up 14, 18, and 23.5 points. So I look at that and I see 2x, 3x, and then pushing 4x. But like we had Josh Allen go 5x, 5x, 5x. I like him much better. Breeze, we're really not getting the upside for GPP. But right below him, we see Alvin Kamara. And typical GPP winning lineups will have chalky running backs that are high owned. That's perfectly fine. Where you want to be different is the wide receiver, the tight end. So take low owned wide receivers that can blow up. I'm fine using chalk running backs, and I love Kamara this week. He's put up 24, 38, and then 47, 48, whatever you want to call it, DK points. Now he's priced up at 8,000, but you're looking, that's 3x, pushing 5x, and pushing 6x. So he's giving you a great value. I think he caught 10 or 11 balls last week and went over the century mark just in the air. Now Michael Thomas is back this week, but he is going to nurse, some type of a slight injury. So he'll take some away from Kamara, but I still think he's going to produce at that price point. And how much is Michael Thomas? All right, so Michael Thomas is $7,600. I'm probably going to go over to Kamara just because I think he's safer. He's going to run the ball and catch it. I want to see what Michael Thomas does after one game if he's in. I don't know. He was questionable last I looked. Oh, and someone just told me he is out this week. So, yes, love Kamara at $8,000. And also, you can come down here. There isn't anyone that I really want on Detroit. Let me look at Hawkinson. So, Hawkinson's 48, and he's put up 16, 10, and 9. Not really enough to blow up for me, but again, you see this room for upside box is kind of popping up. So that means we got some room for some more fantasy points rather than what they are projecting. And then over here, total offense, we got number 3 versus 15. Total defense, we got 7th versus 24th. This is why I'm leaning heavily over here. I'll take 3 and 7 versus 15 and 24. And then over here, both teams are horrible against the short pass. Their short pass defense, New Orleans is 29th, which there's not a lot of people for Detroit that are going to catch short passes that I really care about. But over here, Detroit's giving up 25th to short passes. Well, Alvin Kamara is the king of catching the 3 to 5 yard pass and then taking it another 20 or 30 yards. So this would lead me to say, okay, how does Detroit rank against pass catching running backs? 23rd. Okay, this is another arrow that's pointing towards Alvin Kamara. And I don't care if he's high owned. I will use him. I'll pivot on the wide receivers and different stacks and mix and match. You can also see here Detroit is allowing 29.8 fantasy points to the running back position. And then the Saints are giving up a bunch to the tight end. And Detroit covers the tight end really well. So then maybe you look at Hawkinson here if you want to game stack this on the other side. Anyways, this video is pushing 31 minutes now, so I'm going to go ahead and cut it off here. But this is kind of how I use the sheet. I don't use this main one a whole lot until we get later in the season. The DVP one, I pull it in here. This stack sheet's the main one I look at when I'm looking at players and games. And then this cover sheet is something that I've always exported and looked at on my desktop. And I didn't know if people would like it or not, so I brought it in here. But again, when you're looking at games, come in here and just highlight the 3 and the 3, and you can say, okay, for Indy, these 3 receivers, well, the first thing I see is they're all negative matchups. So that means these 3 corners are going to be good. And then these 3 Chicago corners, they stay on their side of the field. 91, 97, 92, they play in their positions. They're all solid. So maybe that's a tough matchup for them. And then you can go game by game and look at this. The fun thing about it is you can sort it by team and look at the 3 together. You can sort by advantage and see who's got the biggest advantage. You can come over and say, okay, who's getting targeted the most? You can sort by this column. Who has the highest fantasy points per route? Who's got the highest catch rate? And then you can go over here and pick on corners and do the same thing. You know, who's giving up, sort by this column and say, who's giving up the highest catch rate on the defense? You know, well, who's he going to be against? Who's going to have the most fantasy points per route? You know, who's he going to be against? And that'll help you find some GPP plays that you can get in there. And you might find some guys in there that are like, what the, you know, who is this guy? And just write it down on a sheet of paper. And then if he blows up, remember how you found him, what you were looking at, who he was matched up. So the next week you can go back in and find that same corner and be like, okay, well, who's going up against him this week? Because the typical average DFS player, they're going to go after the wide receiver. You know, they don't care about the corner. So if you're looking at the cornerback matchup and if there's shadow coverage and maybe what defenses are going up against him, that'll help you come above the rest and determine, you know, who is the best play, especially for a showdown slate. If someone's out, come in and look, say, okay, what cornerbacks are playing where? How are these cornerbacks? How are they doing? And then that will kind of help you mix and match some of the receivers. And even if you get a guy that plays 50% on the left, 50% on the right, there's one good corner, one bad corner, then do a lineup with each one of the outside receivers, and one of them is bound to bust and catch the touchdown. And we saw that with the Green Bay guy, I think Malik Taylor, or whoever that was that caught that touchdown. He would have been a great showdown play in there. But anyways, I hope you guys like the video. I hope you guys like the new cornerback matchup chart. I use it a lot, and so I'm excited to put it in the sheet and let other people play with it. If you guys find something in there that you like or you want to see different, I'm happy to look at it. Just let me know. And good luck, guys. Good luck in week 4.